News every 15 minutes, weather every 10, and sports twice an hour.
Newstalk, KGVO, AM 1290 and now 101.5 FM.
You're listening to Montana Morning with Peter Christian.
Details of incidents that occurred during the Kaarma trial revealed. Good morning, everyone. It's Montana Morning. It is Monday, February 9th, 2015. Right now we have rain falling in western Montana as we had expected, 36 degrees in Missoula. Roads around the area are bare and wet at this time. Our newscast is sponsored by Kootenai Creek Village, the maintenance-free active adult community in Stevensville. Call 777-5387. Attorneys for convicted murderer Marcus Kaarma filed a brief in Missoula District Court Friday, replying to the state's response to their request for a new trial for their client. The affidavit states, quote, defendant received death threats. Obscenities were painted on the outside of defense counsel's building. Defense attorney Paul Ryan had to call police when he discovered someone shot a window in his home. For the first time, Ryan comments on the incidents that occurred during the trial.
And you're trying to manage a case at the same time. You know, you get things that are, involving you personally that can be difficult, especially when you have your own children and whatnot, and things that involve not only my personal residence as well as my business.
Ryan steadfastly maintains the trial should never have been held in Missoula, due in great part to negative media coverage. He specifically singled out the Missoulian newspaper.
The trial shouldn't be held in that community where there's already been decisions made and so much pressure put, and obvious. I mean, if you read Missoulian reports, it's obvious where they stand and where the tenor of their stories went, and finding, in their opinion, the guilt of Marcus Kaarma.
Despite any sentence handed down by Judge Ed McLean during the hearing, which is scheduled for this Thursday, Kaarma's legal team is preparing an appeal to the Montana Supreme Court. The sentencing of Kaarma is coming up this week. The Missoula neighborhood where a 17-year-old German exchange student Darren Dede was shot to death, and they're generally anxious to move on. Kaarma no longer lives in the house where the shooting occurred after he was convicted in December of deliberate homicide. Missoula District Judge Ed McLean had denied bail. Now Kaarma resides in the Missoula County Jail. On a deliberate homicide conviction, Montana law provides a sentence of between 10 and 100 years. Neighbors Leslie and Tom Wozniak told the Missoulian that they hope the judge hands down a stiff sentence. Another neighbor says the incident will haunt a lot of people for a long time, and people are ready for the legal proceedings to wrap up. Officials in Yellowstone County have released the name of the toddler who died after being struck by a pickup truck backing out of a parking space at a Billings apartment building. Deputy Coroner Cliff Mahoney told the Billings Gazette that 21-month-old Zachary Wiles Jr. died Thursday of blunt force trauma to the head. The driver told officers she did not see the boy. The investigation continues. No citations have been issued. Senate Bill 143 passed Thursday and will now be heard in the State House. The bill, which would allow people with concealed carry permits to legally carry firearms on college campuses, will be strongly opposed by the Montana University System and the Board of Regents. Deputy Commissioner of Higher Education Kevin McCrae explains.
The Montana University System, including the University of Montana, does oppose Senate Bill 143. We don't believe that the introduction of firearms onto our campuses, we don't believe that would make our campuses safer places.
McCrae disagreed that the college campuses are gun-free zones and thus more susceptible to attack by an armed assailant, stating that more guns would bring greater risk to the campus in an active shooter situation.
If it is thought through carefully, one can understand how when police are on the scene and there are multiple civilians brandishing weapons, it's not so easy to discern who the good guy is and who the bad guy is.
McCrae maintains that campuses in Montana are safe because only authorized personnel are allowed to be armed. A proposed bill that would allow terminally ill patients to seek experimental drugs as a last-ditch effort to improve their condition has passed the state Senate. Senate Bill 142 goes to the House, where the Human Services Committee is scheduled to hold a hearing this Wednesday. So-called right-to-try laws are already in place in 5 states. Montana is among another 26 considering the law this year. The national effort to give terminally ill Americans access to investigational medications is being led by the Goldwater Institute. Tax fraud is escalating in Montana, with numbers reaching 26,000 in less than 2 months. Unit Manager of the Income Tax Compliance Office, Micah Christensen, says the common way to do it is on the rise.
People are getting that information, and then they're able to go into the tax preparation softwares or whatever, even the government's systems that like TAP that we use, anything like that, and then try people's information to see if they can access their tax filing information.
Micah explains the way to prevent your information from being stolen by fraudulent individuals by simply changing your password.
One thing we've always been saying is please use a secure internet connection when you file your taxes. And another thing is to always remember that you won't be contacted via email or phone and asked to provide payment. The Department of Revenue or the IRS would not do that.
Last year alone, the Montana Department of Revenue stopped $1.5 million worth of tax fraud. 2 environmental groups have filed a lawsuit against the State Department of Environmental Quality over a large development proposed south of Hamilton. The agency approved a wastewater discharge permit for a 156,000 square foot building in November. It has not been disclosed what the building would be. Bitterrooters for Planning and the Bitterroot River Protective Association maintained in their lawsuit that the public could not provide meaningful comment on the proposed building because key details about it have not yet been released. DEQ spokeswoman Lisa Peterson declined comment on the lawsuit, which is being reviewed by agency attorneys. Last August, Missoula City Council changed the reporting requirements for area pawn shops. Now, some pawn shop owners are involved in a legal fight with the city, arguing that the ordinance is an invasion of privacy and that the private company called Leads Online has no right to store their customers' information. Riverside Pawn co-owner Erica Hughes explains.
Leads Online is not the same as law enforcement. Leads Online is a third-party, for-profit private corporation that stores private personal information in the cloud. Of course, they give us all sorts of assurances that it's only accessible by law enforcement officers, but it's currently used by over 2,100 different agencies, and those agencies have any number of employees that have access to that information.
Hughes argues that Leads Online is not taking enough responsibility for the information it handles.
It's a database, and they can't really make a 100% guarantee of its security. But in the event that there ever was a security breach, they pretty much absolve themselves of all responsibility, and that makes me really uncomfortable. Not only do I not want to supply my customers' private information, but I don't want to be held accountable if ever they were to suffer a security breach.
At this point, Riverside Pawn has refused to comply with the city ordinance under a threat of fine and incarceration. Co-owner Brian Hughes says he believes the information should be protected under the Fourth Amendment. Newstalk Times 610.
Newstalk, KGVO.
Missoula's official weather station.
Areas of rain will develop today. Otherwise, look for cloudy skies with their highs in the upper 40s and low 50s. Winds will be light out of the southwest at 3 to 6 miles per hour. Rain will mix with a little bit of snow this evening. I'm meteorologist Brooke Foster for KECI 13.